The perfection of the Gnostic, the knower of Allah, rises above the pure intellect. A stage is reached when the universal soul takes the place of his body and the pure essence becomes his soul. Let's look at the means and instruments of intuitive knowledge. According to Shah Wali Allah, there's really two means: the intellect and the heart, which reality in relation to each other are effective in this regard. But this intellect and the heart are not the common ones which we often think of and are possessed by all human beings. By intellect, Shah Wali Allah has a particular type in mind. He means an intellect, this is very, very important, which is purified through Zuhd. Zuhd, if you want to use a word in English today, is asceticism, i.e. a disinterest in worldly pursuits. And he calls his intellect, which is purified, the sir. So this sir, or the purified intellect of the arif billah, the knower of God, relinquishes its worldly inclinations and becomes subject to the activity of the first intelligence. In this purified state, the intellect has the ability. To contemplate the supreme manifestation and to receive knowledge from it. This is directly from Allah. And this is the highest stage of the intellect according to Shah Wali Allah. Likewise, if we refer to the heart, it's not a piece of flesh that lies to the left of one's chest or the seat for the baser impulses. It is the heart which is really at the center of being, which because of its purified state is called the spirit or the secret of the heart. Lata'if al-qalb. When the heart is purified from all forms of vices through mystical and religious practices, is attracted towards Allah, the supreme manifestation, and it's brought to a stage where it wants to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a result of this is that one will find tranquility and peace which fills their heart. This is really the highest stage of the heart, and people acquire it in this dunya. But of course, those who don't acquire it after they have been purified in the life to come by perhaps going into the fire and being purified as a result. But we want Allah to purify our heart in the dunya. This knowledge that's received by the sir, the intellectual aspect, and the qalb, the lata'if, is the highest stage, and we call this al-Huduri, knowledge by presence, which we've already talked about in previous episodes. Because in illumination and in intuition, the sensory and bodily functions cease, and the seeker of God feels the knowledge and inspiration as having arisen from deep within himself. This knowledge comprises the knowledge of the whole universe, which the knower of Allah realizes in his own ana, in his own self. Shah Wali in fact writes elsewhere in his Altaf al-Quds, the perfection of the Gnostic, the knower of Allah, rises above the pure intellect. A stage is reached when the universal soul takes the place of his body and the pure essence becomes his soul. Then by the dint of the knowledge by presence, he sees the whole universe within himself. And I'm sure many of you will be aware of the verse in the Quran where it talks about this idea of looking deep within oneself. We are all a part of the universe. We all have the universe deeply embedded within us. In which case, it does not seem to him that knowledge or inspiration percolate down to him from above. Instead, he sees the upheavals of state and the inner ferment of knowledge and inspiration as having arisen from within himself. So often we think of it coming down from above, but it's actually coming from within himself, with one intuition giving rise to another and one thought causing depression while another gives rise to pleasure. In other words, because of this desire to achieve more, he wants to keep going and he's getting pleasure, but that's also mixed with a sense of dissatisfaction. This is called the illumination of the essence. This is quite metaphysical and quite mystical, I hope, for most of us. But we ask Allah to bless us at least with some insight to focus on purifying ourselves. What is clear from Shah Sahib when he mentions this in his Altaf al-Quds, is that the purified intellect and the heart which receives secret knowledge from this supreme manifestation, we talked about this in a previous episode, the tajalli, in an indescribable way. You can't really describe this. But the question is how this intellect and heart can be purified. How do you purify the intellect to reach this higher intellect and this heart, to reach this level of sir? In other words, what's the method of the purification of the heart and this intellect that Shah Sahib has in mind? And what will be the consequences of that purification? I'm going to talk about that in the next episode. Till then, Assalamu alaikum.